You are listening to Let's Be Honest with your host, Just Jonda. Hello and welcome to Let's Be Honest. I'm your host, Just Jonda, and tonight we are here for episode 102. If you can believe it, we're going to give ourselves a round of applause for that. I know you all haven't haven't heard the big episode 100 yet, but needless to say, a lot of editing had to go into that. So you'll have it. It's going to be coming up. It should be posted this weekend. Just a little bit of extra work for that. And with good reason, right? It's a momentous occasion. So again, all the clips of news that we've talked about over the past, it's been a year and a half to get to that point. So very exciting. But tonight, you're going to get that weekly feature that you love. We are talking Bravo Gossip and Real Housewives of Salt Lake City, Season 2, Episode 13. Another good one. This is kind of the direction we expected things to go with this show. Once of course, there was the slow build up to the big moment with them going to Vale and the whole Jen Shah thing. But once they got there, boy, they've been giving it us. Of course, we can all lament about them potentially getting there quicker because they may have lost some folks along the way, taking so long to get to episode 12 or maybe what was that, maybe episode 9 or 10 when everything went down. But they are definitely bringing it now, and this week was no exception, between uh, Jen Shah being back but only Heather having hers. We're going to talk about that. There is still something about Mary, and on top of that, she's a hoarder, but I think at least Missy and I peeped that before. I don't think anybody could possibly miss it. Lisa Barlow is in denial, but that's the river she floats in on a regular basis. We're certainly going to talk about her trying to shadow produce, but not wanting to actually live in it. So you'll get some of our commentary on that, especially and really taking down the fourth wall a bit as it relates to Lisa Barlow and what she's attempting to do versus how it's turning out. I think that she's still getting what she wanted, just not in the way she wanted. So we're going to talk about that. Whitney Rose is rebranding. I don't necessarily have a problem with that, except as giving a She by Sheree, where's the product vibe. And so, um, and it's unfortunate because I am not a Whitney hater. I've always had a bit of an affinity for Whitney, and I actually like her even more now that, voice notwithstanding, you're really getting to see Whitney hold her own among the women. If nothing else, even if she's not going to fight with them, she's definitely bringing the tea, and going after the information, and she is making herself a force in the sense that if you are going to F with her, however she has to do it, she's beyond the point of taking it. She is giving at least Mary the same treatment that she gave Lisa Barlow by the reunion last season, which is at a certain point, I'm just going to have to put the baby dolls away and come after you too. The whole business side of things, well, ooh, that's a horse of a different color. So we'll come back to that. But most importantly, so that's our overview. That's kind of where we're going. But more important, we've got Missy here. Yay!
Hi, everyone.
Okay,
How are you?
applause sound very Maury Povich.
Eh, no, they sound like wonderful, especially because no one, when you're a lawyer, no one is ever happy to see you.
No,
No one. So I like the applause. It's very nice. It's the only time in my life I get it. So I'm just going to drink that up.
exactly. Let's just eat it up. Okay, so we start the episode where and I can't knock it because this is again typical for any housewife show, and they all do it when they come back from a trip, whether it's talking to their kids, their husbands, whomever just happens to be in the vicinity or in their homes. They have a conversation and kind of give their version of the recaps, and I like it because you get everybody's recaps is in keeping with who they are. Certainly in this one, I felt like everybody's recap was fairly in keeping with their character and just showcased even more of who they were. I think Jenny's was just as pragmatic as her conversations with her husband when she was in Vale, like very much just I felt like Jenny, if anybody, is just the facts and nothing but the facts, because I really feel like even though Lisa is her friend, she is still operating from a standpoint of not really having a dog in the race. And I'm not mad at that. So that's pretty much the way she's talking about it. And excuse me, that's the way she talked about it with her husband while she was in Vale.
Right, right. Um,
So go ahead.
but she seems like slightly emotionally disconnected in a way that is kind of surprising because I know if I went away on a girls' weekend and the whole weekend was just about this one thing, I would not be so as disconnected as her. I would have felt something, which she does not. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think that what we're getting from Jen, I agree with you on that. I would take that a step further and say that I agree with the disconnect, and I think part of the disconnect is it goes sort of to what I was saying as well, which is she is new to the cast. She still really doesn't truly have a relationship with anybody but Lisa, yet she kind of sees a little bit of what Lisa is doing. She doesn't want to call her completely out because that's her friend. But she definitely gets it. We could tell based on little things she says. She gets that Lisa's on some BS. I think she's kind of Robin and Giselleing it, which is not calling her out in front of people. But I don't. But we can tell from how pragmatic she is that she's no dummy. And her confessionals are very like she kind of goes in like she's not reading during her professionals confessionals, but she's saying some stuff that at the reunions some folks might call her out on, and she's not lying. She's just saying stuff that people may not like. But it as to the disconnect, I think it's a combination of not really being quite as connected to the women before this blow up happened. And I also think it's part of her personality. I just think that she just has a very matter of fact affect. I think that's so it's I think it's a little bit of both, and because of that it comes off very much as a disconnect, even though I don't think that her intention is to appear like she doesn't care. But when you take those two things, like I don't really know them, the one person I do know is kind of the villain, and I'm kind of a pragmatic type chick anyway. It is
Yeah.
what it is.
Yeah, and this person
And we
gave me
said,
two shoes. And this person gave
huh?
me two shoes.
Yeah, and we said this last week too. I think that Jenny really only goes full emotion if it has something to do with her. Like, even though, for instance, when they were on the ice thing and even later on the ski trip, she kind of had those moments where she yelled out at the group, like, everybody shut up, kind of thing. I
Right.
don't. I don't think that that was her, like, I don't know what's and I know that you know what I'm trying to get at. I don't think that was her necessarily being emotionally invested. I think that was truly her way of saying, shut up. Like, she was kind of yelling at them the same way that she would yell at her kids. Not because she necessarily cares. I think she just was like, we're here to have a good time and shut up. But when Mary reacted to her, then of course she reacted back.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, I think she's just kind of a uh and I certainly don't mean this in a negative way. I just think she's just a very like black and white kind of chick.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, are you kind of getting that from her? Just like, very black and white? Because
I
even her
think
daughter's kind of like that, but it's funny because she's 9.
right. Well, the daughter, that's a whole nother thing. Because there's one thing, I mean, the daughter was a little bit rude to an adult. I wasn't feeling that. But yeah, I just I think I feel like she's trying to um become a character, but she
Mhm.
hasn't yet decided on the
Who the character is.
yeah. Yeah. Is she gonna be rah rah yelling at people? Is she gonna be mild mannered? Is she gonna be the neutral one? It's like all over the place. I mean, even when she's like, yeah, I wanna have them everyone sit down and become friends. I mean, like, girl, like, do you really? Like, do you I mean, you just spent the whole weekend with all of those people and you didn't say a thing. Like, what are you gonna do now?
Well, I think it's also tough too because, of course, we got to remember they're being produced as well. So she's got a producer who's giving her things to do because we know that these shows are basically scripted. The only thing that they have this season that really wasn't scripted, which is why it Vale ended up even more off the rails than cast trips normally are, is the Jen Shah thing. Because even Bravo couldn't have scripted that. Now,
Right.
for Bravo purposes, it was freaking manna from heaven. Like, they could not have asked for better. Like, that's the stuff you pray to the reality TV gods for. And then you have pros like they are at Bravo because they've been doing this for so long, and they were able to pivot and adapt. And then of course you've got 6 months to make put it into actual episodes. But everything else, everything with Mary Cosby and this one hosting this trip or that one hosting that dinner, all of that stuff is storyboarded out,
Mm-hmm.
and including these Jenny's dinner party, because this is a way for the new person to do something on every show. Because again, you and I watched them all, and,
Yeah.
and have watched them from way back in the beginning. So that's how we can speak so intelligently to the sort of production side of it. You've got to do something to bring the newbie into it, because even if the new person comes with a storyline, if they're not someone who is like totally friends with all or most of the people in the group, whatever their storyline is, unless it's something scandalous or starting some smack with another castmate, that still doesn't totally get them into the group. So the other way that they do it, which of course we've seen many times, is you have them host something, or something like even on Potomac. I mean, Wendy was there all last season, but some of her stuff, like, yeah, she had a couple of moments, but but a lot of her stuff, like with her family, still wasn't totally with the cast. And because
Right.
that cast was so splintered, especially with them going into the season from a production aspect, knowing that pretty much everything was going to lead up to and ultimately revolve around the Robin Monique thing, there was still not a true opportunity for Wendy to for them to show why Wendy is a part of this group of friends. So of course we started this season with her having that one party that they came to, the goddess party, like Wendy was constantly hosting. Where with this cast, they didn't have Jenny constantly hosting, but I think part of that is because, like last year with Mary Cosby, when the season started, they had not, or when they started filming, not so much when the season started, when they started filming, they were not sure what Jenny's role was going to be. Jenny wasn't upgraded until full cast until conveniently right after Jen
Yeah.
Shah got arrested, because maybe they didn't know if she was going to be back. Um, I think up until that point, and we can kind of see it based on where the season went, clearly there was a friend race in terms of who was either going to be the friend or the cast member between her and Angie. And
Mhm.
then
Mhm.
Angie, it kind of fell off because even though you didn't get a whole lot from Jen, you still got a little bit more than you got from Angie, because it was Angie's still kind of quiet. And ultimately, when push came to shove, she just apologized and backed down.
I also think, I mean, this all leads me back to what I was saying several weeks ago about how I think this whole trying to have a baby, sister wife storyline was manufactured
Oh,
because
yeah.
that just disappeared into the ether. And
Oh, oh,
it's,
absolutely. Because
yeah,
ultimately, when it comes down to it, that still does not connect her with the women. Ultimately, if you are going to be a part of a Housewives cast and secure your next season, there needs to be some connection with you and these women. Like,
right.
again, going back to Wendy with Potomac, at the very least, even though that's not the group she ended up with by the time this season got going good, at least by the very end of the season, she had more or less firmly secured a spot as a part of the Green Eyed Bandit crew plus Candace,
Now,
which was the majority
I
on
will
that
tell you,
cast.
and we can talk about this later in the show because we haven't gotten to her yet. The person
Mhm.
who is really great at centering themselves and coming up with good storylines is Heather.
Heather is Heather is
Really good.
great at it, and as much as I'm not a fan, as in, outside of our commentator hat, just putting on my regular viewer hat, and we're like, oh, who do you like? Who do you like? Not like. Now, as a regular viewer, is Lisa Barlow my favorite? No. But as a commentator, Lisa is doing the job. As everybody says, Lisa is handling the assignment. The only thing that with Lisa, and as I touched on earlier, and we're going to get into, is that how she wanted her star to appear is not exactly as it's appearing. And it's really funny because she is emerging as the star she wanted to be, just not exactly for the reason she wanted to be it. So that, and I think you already know, and probably a lot of our brilliant viewers already know where we're going with that part of the
Hmm.
conversation. So anyway, they get back, and for you guys, if you're new to our commentary, you'll know that our philosophy is, if you're into this show, then you watched it, so we don't have to tell you everything that happened. We're giving you like our opinion and pontificating on how we feel about what happened.
And we
So
have lots of feelings about
we
it.
have lots of feelings and opinions, too many. That's why we had to start early. So So everybody's giving their opinions. I mean, giving their story. Everybody's story is showing off their personality. Lisa, because you know I love my Lisa impression. I tried to drink some extra tea beforehand. Lisa has to tell John everything that occurred. John, I can't believe it. You know, I'm a little hoarse because I ended up talking more today than usual, but I think my Lisa's almost there.
It's
Um,
really good.
okay, John, you just won't believe it. It was awful, John. It was awful. And then they were all trying to gang up on me. I don't even know why, John. And then when the call from Jen came in, it's Jen, John, you can't leave, you can't leave. Because John was dying to get out of that room. Was it just me, or was John like he was like a prisoner?
I think that all of her relationships are like this. I think she should give a master class called Leading Through Victimhood. And
Yes.
it would be a sellout. It would be a
Absolutely.
sellout.
She is the poster child for weaponized white woman tears. If there weren't so many black and Hispanic girls named Lisa, we should be calling people Lisas instead of Karens.
I I
Because
would hate to be a member of her family because I know in her natural habitat it is painful.
it has got to be a nightmare. Oh my goodness. So, and then you combine that with the fact that she also thinks that she's a boss who knows everything and everyone. So, like you catch it with Lisa coming and going, and then you get that voice, and I love it. I love it. I love that. Oh, I
Yeah,
love
yeah.
that. I love that.
And her husband just listens. He just is like zoning out in a happy place.
He's a beaten
Like,
man. He's
yeah,
he's a beaten man.
yeah.
So ultimately what we work our way up to is that Jen, although they didn't show it, she said she called everyone. I mean, I'm sure she probably didn't call Mary or Whitney, because I'm not really sure. It doesn't appear that they're on the outs, but I don't think they're nowhere near with Heather. I think Whitney is kind of at an arm's length kind of situation with Jen right now. I think they're like keeping the peace, and she'll laugh and joke with her, but I don't think that she even cares to try to be her friend anymore. I think that is a spot reserved entirely for Heather and then Lisa for other reasons, and we'll come to that in a bit. So, but at any rate, whomever she's calling, no one returned her call except for Heather, at least on the show. And so we see she and Heather have their meeting. Um, I didn't necessarily. I know a lot of people talked badly about Heather. I saw a lot where she faced some backlash online, and for the umpteenth time, although I would like to give our listeners credit for being smarter than everybody else. For the umpteenth time, you have to put into perspective that this is days after the arrest last March. So where everyone, including her castmates, were last March is the knowledge base they are working from. And also, you combine that with the fact that, at least in the case of Heather, maybe not so much the others because the relationship was more about opportunity and being on the show, but at least in the case of Heather, there seems to be, at least from Heather to her, a genuine esteem and love for her. And again, only within the first week or so of all of this breaking. Yes, there's probably, because of their money and access, they're probably getting some fairly decent information from better sources than even we have. But for the most part, the sources and the information that they're given was still pretty much only what was available to anybody at that time. Even if you called your lawyer, the information your lawyer had was what was available through Pacer, looking up any um looking up what court documents had been filed at that time, and maybe if somebody was lucky and had some connections in the Southern District of New York and a friend that might have talked to them on the down low. Other than that, you have to remember that, similar to Erica Jane, and this is not in defending Jen in any way, we are watching this from a knowledge base that runs far deeper than what these women had at the time, and from the standpoint of not having a genuine love and care about her the way that Heather does. Do you think that kind of covers it, Missy?
Yeah, I do, but I also think that Heather has been through a lot
Yeah,
and is is very sympathetic to being in that position where everybody is judging you because she talks a
ostracized.
lot.
Yes.
She talks a, I mean, that's a major part of her storyline is that, she was put out in the cold. So I just think that no matter what, like no matter what she knows about Jen Shah, like even if she knew Jen Shah did it, I think she was always going to have that meal with her, no matter
I
what.
agree. I definitely agree. Even if it was just that one meal, I don't think, at least, and again, we can only go based on the character that she has shown us. So I will preface that by saying we all know that we don't know Heather Gay personally, but the character that she has shown us, I agree with you 100%. Even if it's that one meal and never another one, which of course, since Jen stupidly stayed on the show, there'll be many more meals, but in terms of giving her that love based on who Heather has shown herself to be, Heather would give that to anybody that she cared about at some point.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Because it's not like she sat there totally unquestioning some things. Even if she didn't say it to her face, she certainly said it in her confessional, which admittedly was probably done months later. Like, she certainly was no dum dum when it came to what Jen was trying to pull with the stew thing. And talk about Bravo. Like, if you ever wonder if your boss is all about their money and don't give a damn about you, Bravo is like, Bravo proves it every week on every show, because it's not just Jen Shah. I mean, I don't even understand how, and Lord knows I don't watch the show, but I've seen pieces of it. I don't even understand how Portia has a producer credit on her show, given the way that the editing team on that show make a fool out of her on her own show.
Yeah, yeah.
and 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 we see it on all the shows. They will pull some tape on you in a minute, because when Jen started that crap with Stu, we all knew that she was full of crap, but just in case you forgot, Bravo was making sure that you knew.
I mean, because they were thick as thieves. I mean,
That was
Stu
like smoking
was
gun
like
type
another
crap, the way
housewife.
yeah. I mean, but
Yeah.
that particular reel in particular, and we knew that they were kind of setting her up, even with when they showed that scene the first time. And also, remember when they showed that other scene with her and him in the garden? What was that, a couple of weeks ago? And she was, before she was arrested, and she was talking about how she takes care of him and his family and all of
Oh
that.
yeah,
those
yeah.
are those are scenes that would have been on the cutting room floor no matter what. Even the banana scene, that was probably something they just happened to pick up, because as we know, they get hundreds of hours of film of these women, because they set up cameras in their homes and follow them and wherever they give them permission to, for like, 4 to 6 months at a time, depending on the length of how many episodes they're going to be given. But it even, they always did do goofy scenes between Jen and her staff. So the banana scene, okay, they might have kept that in there, because that was similar to the goofy thing they did last year with her roller skating through the house. But that garden thing, that was absolute throwaway footage, except for the fact that he's her co-defendant.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
That was
whew,
bad.
I
I
want.
was
Mm,
And then when she said that he looked at her and said, "I'm sorry," even if that did happen, I don't know why she thought that that was I don't know why she thought that that would be a good thing to say, because whether that happened or not, that could be interpreted in a number of ways. That could be what she had hoped we would take from it, which is, "I'm sorry, I lied on you, or I set you up," or it could be, "I'm sorry, I dropped a dime on what we was doing," which is exactly what he did. Now, of course, because she lied her way through the whole thing when she tried to mischaracterize their relationship. Who knows if that ever did happen, but whether it did or it didn't, that wasn't a statement that couldn't be interpreted in a way that wasn't favorable to her.
yeah, I mean, I think on another day, you and I and whomever should have a. I think it's interesting to look at these things through the lens of the skills that got these women to where they are now with
Oh,
the
we
money and the influence
we
are the
definitely have to do. I think that's going to be a multi-part episode. We
yeah, those are the skills that they're displaying on this show as they interact with each other, like that power move, giving out the gifts, the
mhm.
weaponized tears, the team building that some of these girls do, like the pre-gaming, telling their side of the story before you even get there. It's all like it's very raw on this show. I mean, you
and it's
see it on other shows, but it's super raw on this
and
show.
Well, you know why it's extra raw on this show? Because these women, even though there is a lot that's produced, but most of that is because of Bravo itself. This, I think that we are getting a cool combination in this show, and it's really sort of a cool marriage between viewers like you and I, who have watched the evolution of reality TV, like going all the way back to 1800 House on PBS, which, most people don't realize came even before the Real World. Yeah, because,
Right.
we watched 1800 House. Um, and that was good, by the way. Um, all the way from the, just the evolution of reality TV, certainly the evolution of the Housewives, which was a concept unto itself that has had its own inner evolution. But I think what's great for a viewer like you and I, who have the benefit of watching that and watching it critically, and not just Missy and I, but some many of our listeners, is that this group is within they're not only within their first two seasons, so they're not quite as seasoned as the other women in terms of the fakery, but because they have watched the other shows, and all of these shows are long in the tooth, they know that they have to work a little harder. So you're right, we are seeing their skills that got them to other places in their lives. They are actually using those skills actively on this show, because they know that, given that they are late to the Housewives family of shows, they've got to work a little harder to keep theirs on the air, because the whole Housewives thing in general is kind of played out, unless there's stunts and drama and whatever. And even that's a little played out when you're seeing it from the same group of women over and over. Hello, Atlanta. So I think you're absolutely right. We're seeing them put their actual job skills, corporate skills, all of that to work, because Jen in particular, one, she's not a dumb person. She just does dumb things. And and we know that because she was at the top of her field when working for other people. This is a woman who was so at the top of her field with her last company that she was a vice president, which is why she was one of the people deposed when the government came after the company.
Yeah, and I think that there are certain um team building sales and suggestion
And
skills that she's
yes, because wasn't
using
she
on
was like
everybody else.
VP of training and sales or something like that.
Yes,
Those
yes,
are the razzle dazzle people. Those are they are like, for instance, when Richard Gere does that big number in Chicago. Well, I'm talking about Chicago, the movie. That's why I'm referencing Richard Gere. But when the lawyer in Chicago does that whole big scene about razzle dazzle and what we have to do in the courtroom to capture a jury and sometimes even capture the imagination, depending on your client. That's salespeople. That's what we're doing. When I am in that courtroom and I'm in front of a jury, I'm selling my client, but I'm also selling myself, because if the jury doesn't like me, they're not going to particularly care for my client either. So there's a fine line you have to walk. So there's salesmanship involved there. There's acting skills, there's all of that. And if you're going to be an effective salesperson and she's training people, she's got to have that razzle dazzle too. So she knows what she's doing. Now, unfortunately, as with everybody, you get into situations that are out of your depth, because I couldn't do that in the hospital and bluff my way through surgery. And
right,
and Jen cannot, while a lawyer can be a salesperson can't necessarily be a lawyer. And that's the problem that Jen is having, because she thinks that she can still sell herself in a way on this show in a way that is not going to be harmful to her in a legal sense, and that is just not true.
right, right.
um
Yeah, it'll be interesting. How all of that is eventually going to play out. I
and
mean,
another
she.
co-defendant has pled guilty, by the way.
Oh,
Pled
who has
guilty
pled
on Monday.
guilty? Who's pled guilty? Hold on.
Well,
Who is it?
I can't remember the name, but another one. Well, we know that Stu did a couple of weeks ago, so this is another one. Because remember, when you and I counted them up, even before Stu, they were pretty much at 50%, and maybe even like 50 plus 1% in terms of people who had pled guilty and or have already been sentenced. Remember when we went through that list?
Right, right, right.
So, once you add Stu and then whomever this other person was, it's definitely more at the point where it's more than half of the group.
Wow.
Because
Okay.
some of the when I looked at it in terms of the tiers, some of the people had already, like, there was some people, their entire tier had already just said, okay, screw it.
Yeah, we're going down.
Yeah, we're going down and whatever. And of course, some of those had got lesser time. And it's crazy because even at the lowest levels, I have to look at it again, but I'm almost positive, with the exception of maybe one person out of that entire list of people, there was nobody that didn't get any time, even if they didn't get much. So, but people where she is did time, and she is still clowning on TV, talking reckless, um and also potentially forcing a trial, which means that things are going to be said about you. And I get the whole thing about, yes, you were the person who sold, and we talked about this last week, especially in relation to the ABC special on Hulu. Yes, there is, and I'm sure they will, because they'd be crazy not to. One of the probably the pillar of her defense is going to be, I sold lists, which is not illegal, maybe unethical, but not illegal, and I have no control over what anyone did with them. But that does not take into account the fact that clearly the government anticipated that that would be what people in her position, like her and Stu, would say, which is why they held off on their indictments for so long, so that they could close the loop on the piece with the money laundering and other people who will say, yes, that is where their role began, but it's not where their role ended. And if there is nothing that you did wrong, why the alleged laundering? Constantly opening companies, the whole Kosovo thing, which is real freaking crazy. I mean, Kosovo? Like, I mean, considering that you're Tongan, like, I feel like it might have made more sense if you opened up if you open some bank accounts on some, there's got to be some Polynesian island where there's a bank that doesn't give a damn who puts their money in it.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. I mean, she was not at the top of that. And when we're talking about we're talking about sales, right? And when you
Hmm.
break it down, we're actually talking about sort of like multi-level marketing,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
And when you're
Except there was no product.
well, I mean, and most of the multi-level marketing and the large majority, there's a product, but a lot of times it's not worth
Yeah,
anything.
I mean, well,
But
yeah,
you
there's
know,
issues with the product, and of course, you get into being labeled in an illegal pyramid scheme because the
yeah,
product is so de minimis that, of course, the test for the pyramid scheme is whether the majority of the money is made on the whole thing of bringing people in
right.
versus actual sales of the product. Um,
But I think
but,
at the
but
end of
that's
the
still what it was
day,
allegedly supposed to be, a
yeah, and
multi-level
I
marketing.
think at the end of the day, right? Just like how in the Epstein trial, there is a fine line between these victims who brought in other victims or preyed on other
Hmm.
victims, right?
Yep.
I think what Jen Shah is banking on is that I was a victim.
It's that the problem is it's hard to find her victim piece. To me, the people in the middle, like the people who ran the sales floors, would have a better argument for being a victim in terms of saying, look, I'm like two rungs down from whoever came up with this in a nefarious way. By the time you get to me, I'm literally just somebody working for somebody else. Did it necessarily feel good? Did it make me want to take two showers when I went home at night? Probably, but feeling like your job is a bit distasteful is still not the same thing as actively doing something
That's
illegal.
true, but surely she's counting on a jury trial,
Oh, well,
not a bench
oh
trial.
yeah, no bench trial. I cannot imagine
Yeah, she's
counting
counting
on a
on a
jury.
jury trial, and she's going to stay on this show so that there's an awareness in the ether of who she is, right?
I
Like,
would hope not. If I was her
no, that's what
lawyer,
she's going
I
to
wouldn't let
do.
her appear at the reunion, but that's just me.
No, that's what I mean, I think that's what she's banking on.
Oh, she's absolutely banking on it. So it's just a mess. Well, since we're talking about Jen, because once we do her home scene, we basically don't really have anything else with her. So we're talking about Jen. Let's go home with her and Coach Shah.
What was
Um,
Coach Shaw thinking? I mean, I want the
I
thought bubble. I want the thought bubble above his head to be filled in for me because
well, there were two things that struck me with Coach Shaw. One, brother was way too happy about Popeyes, but hey, because truth be told, everybody that I've dealt with who has been in the Utah area, interestingly enough, and I think I told you this before, said the best chicken place is actually the one that Mary's aunts and them own. Believe it or not, they have the best chicken. Um, but I guess, given that they're all whatever, how often does he get Popeyes? And I'm sure he tries to be in shape, but brother was like, wow, he was real. You would have thought she
Yeah.
fried that chicken and made him some collard greens and macaroni and cheese. He was real pressed. Um, but I can't, my kids get pressed about fried chicken too, because I don't fry it. But anyway, he was he was real excited. That's number one. The second thing is Jen Shah has officially figured out how to make black crack, because I tell you what, Coach Shah looked like he has aged 15 years since last season.
Yeah. Yeah.
And again, black men are resilient, so as long as he ain't on crack or nothing, he could clean up, put on a nice suit, and then we'll be saying, oh, he's good looking again. But he looked like a beaten man, and again, it seems like this, just based on the way she was talking and in terms of not hearing from people and whatever. Although, girl, you changed your phone number, but it seems like this is probably still within the first couple of weeks, and so of course your house would probably be like a funeral scene. I can only imagine how it was for her to face those boys. And
Yeah.
speaking of those
Yeah.
boys, a quick bounce back, because the nonsense she was talking about the family and all that. Look, based on what she said, no shade, but just straight up all tea. Based on everything that they have said, every time she mentions somebody from Coach Shaw's family, and that's not just in this episode, but throughout, it is somebody that they have had to take in, build up, give some money
From the
to, or
hood,
whatever, coming
protect them from violence.
out of South Central. It's South Central LA. So I'm not even pressed about the fact that they haven't heard from Coach Shaw's family, because based on, if we pick up on context clues as it relates to his family, they the kind of folks that when the feds come knocking, they out.
Yeah, yeah. But I also think they're the kind of people who were not checking for Jen Shah.
They were
And
checking for her as long as her and Coach Shaw are living well and they can help them out. And again,
right.
I'm not saying that to be rude. I'm quite frankly saying that because, we know folk and we got family. Um,
Yeah, yeah,
uh,
yeah.
and right now, you're of no use to us. In fact, we came to your boring ass Utah with your stupid TV show and your wife clowning and all of this stuff because we supposed to be living good. We supposed to be living like Fresh Prince of Bel Air up in this mug, and we getting walked out with AF-15s or whatever they are. We could be
Yeah.
dealing with this at home in South Central. This is not supposed to be what Utah is like. Could you
Yeah.
imagine leaving South Central and whatever it is that she claims that they're escaping from, and you up in your little rented chalet of your cousin or your uncle in Utah, and the feds, Homeland Security in the Southern District of New York is showing up with freaking automatic weapons
I
and
mean,
walk
I'd be
you out and
mortified.
you appear on TV? So, no, I ain't got nothing for you. And as a grandmother, I'm not a grandmother, but I'm speaking as a mother who, will hopefully be a grandmother one day. And so I'm looking at it from the potential perspective of Coach Shaw's mother, or even knowing my
Yeah.
mom, or even knowing my mom as I do, and how my mom would feel. My mom would certainly have an issue with the fact that her grandchildren were held at gunpoint by feds and Homeland Security, not to mention it being recorded. And although it wasn't on TV yet, probably would potentially be on TV, which it is now. And it's all because of your wife. Because remember, you're not talking, when you talking about who's calling you, she's not talking about her mama. She talking about his mama. Boo. This is one of those times where if you didn't know, she ain't your mama. She his mama. She ain't your grandmama. She's
Yeah.
those black babies' grandmama. So she don't give a damn about you. She's mad. Coach Shaw can say that they love her. They might love her, but I guarantee you they mad because if she a grandmother like me and you know grandmothers, and we know black grandmothers, she may never speak to that woman again after seeing and hearing what happened to her grandchildren.
Don't you think it was weird, like how she was so like manic and panicked, and Coach Shaw did nothing, in my opinion,
I
to
agree.
soothe or comfort her. Like I thought that that was definitely weird.
Well, you know what? In watching them over the past year, that seems to be his personality, but I don't think that anybody saw a problem with it because we didn't deal with him and her in this kind of thing. But when you think about it and you look back, all of their interactions was him, whether on the phone or even in person, was platitudes and assurances. I didn't see hugs or affection. Even when they had that discussion in their bedroom that time, platitudes and assurances, telling her, I'm always going to love you, I'm never going to leave you, I'm this and that and the third, I'm devoted to you. Reunion, I love her. She stood by me when I went through my stuff, because it's clear reading between the lines that Coach Shaw went off the rails when becoming pro wasn't an issue. If I recall correctly, it sounds like he even alluded to perhaps being out in them streets. But and she stood by and probably, and clearly held things down when while he went to law school, probably put him through law school, because they both graduated at the same time, and then she worked and he had to find another direction.
Right.
So I think that he is one of those men who, unlike many others that we see, especially in the media, that once they get their glow up, finish law school, medical school, whatever, that goes on to younger, hotter, whatever. He's one of those who, and it may not just be because of her helping him through school, it may be because of whatever he alluded to that he put her through in that interim, that he feels devoted, obligated. He's also Muslim, so that may play into him feeling a certain level of obligation to his boys, and in terms of their family. But as far as him being comforting and affectionate, all I've ever seen from him is platitudes and assurances.
Very impersonal.
Hmm.
Very impersonal. Like
Yeah.
if I'm talking about how I would miss everybody, including my child, and
Hmm.
the unthinkable, and you just get someone who I need the thought bubble. Like he's
Yeah,
just
because
staring at her. Like,
because however we may feel about our belief in her innocence or guilt, and I think that if you all have listened to this show long enough, you already know where we stand on that. However,
yeah,
however we may feel about that part, and the fact that she was clearly putting 20 on 10, certainly as it relates to the stuff with Stu. I don't think that everything we saw from Jen, and I know it can be hard for those who are just like have written her off entirely. I don't think that every emotion and everything that came out of her mouth that we saw from Jen in this episode was disingenuous. I think that despite her inability to cry, but we know that that's plastic surgery and Botox and the tear duct thing that they get done. I think that her emotion when she was talking to Heather about her boys. I think that that was absolutely real, because I think the one thing, the piece that she's not going to say, because of course she's not admitting her guilt, is that she recognizes, a, that her boys were in danger generally because of the situation, and b,
Yeah, yeah.
that it was because of her, and not because of her as in they're looking for me, but and I'm innocent. It's because of me, because I did some dirty ish and now it's coming to bear. So I don't think that her emotion about that was disingenuous. And I do think that when you have someone with narcissistic and maybe even a little sociopathic tendencies when it comes to their acceptance about what they have done, or because some people really do believe that they're innocent of the shit that they're doing even when they do it.
I
um
think she might be one of those
yeah,
people. I
I
do.
think that Bernie Madoff didn't think that everything that he did was wrong, because in his mind he believed that ultimately he was going to make things right, and that and that he was continuing to do it in an attempt to make things right, not to keep stealing just for the sake of stealing. People like Jen, Bernie Madoff, and a few others, and they don't have to be serial killers or anything like that. People like that can pass polygraphs because they really believe the words that are coming out of their mouth.
Right, because she's like, how much I've done for people, like how
Absolutely.
much, I mean, even like her generous gifts last year, right?
Hmm.
She was always throwing a party for
Hmm.
somebody, giving gifts here.
Mary,
Yeah.
Mary's another one.
But Mary
That
is more strategic. See, Jen was just doing that stuff to floss.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Mary
no, no, no. But I'm saying just in
always has
terms
a
of
reason.
giving stuff. Yeah, like
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and Mary, even in her strategy, like it's a little off, because Mary still has that cult leader mentality, and I'm not saying that she has a cult leader mentality because she's running a cult. I'm just saying there are certain people who have those traits, and they're not always the smartest, they're not always the this or that. All they need is the belief in who they are in front of a group of people. They believe who they are, what they're saying, the product that they're selling it, and when they realize that there is a group of people who are willing to buy it, that gives them confidence to push it further. Because I think that that's what happened with Mary. I don't think she started out the gate with the confidence to believe that she could be the leader of that congregation, because that's
Right.
not why she went into the flim flam scam that she did with her husband, and then ultimately getting rid of him and marrying grandpa. I think Mary just wanted to live well.
And
And
and I also think that she probably learned some tricks from her grandmother, including the power of suggestion.
yeah, and maybe not even from her grandmother. Remember, some, well, there was probably some of that as a child, but remember, she also was married to the person who worked with an Mama Redmond
Right, right,
for 25 or 24 years, 22, 24 years, which is Paw Paw. And
right,
then she married the person who was Mama's partner.
right,
And
right.
then and so I'm going to use the word grooming, but not in the way that other people are using it. I don't think he groomed her in terms of her being his whatever, because she was a grown married woman when she got with him. I'm saying groomed her as his successor in terms of her being the head of the church, because she was had a little bit more charisma than him.
Right, right,
And so and the people at the church were used to following a woman. They followed
right.
Mama, and so now they're following Mama's granddaughter. And, when you get into that weird bastardized version of the Bible, fire and brimstone, uh, Pentecostals that, but not Pentecostals in a good way, the ones who like, I mean, we don't even know what version of the Bible they're reading. Like
Right.
they haven't quite gotten to the point of dancing with snakes, but they're only like half a rung above them. You're getting into that realm of people who go to tent revivals where folks are healed. Those are the types of people that Mary has in her church and the type of ministry that she's running. And we know that because of the types of things that they are willing to do for her, which is why she has the lifestyle that she has. Because as we know from many documents, uh, while they talk about all the other businesses the family has, other family members run a lot of those businesses. So all of that money is not funneling directly to Mary, because there was a point where it was determined that her mother was going to be the executor of the estate, most of which was either squandered or pretty much what wasn't squandered was basically run out with all the litigation. And certainly as executor, then she would be somewhat in control over who's dealing with the businesses and where all that money goes. So even though Mary tries to claim that most of the money doesn't come from church and church members because of the other businesses, and there are other businesses, not all of them funnel money directly to Mary and Robert, because if her mom's the executor of the state and she don't f with them that way, she ain't going to make sure that they get that money.
Yeah, yeah. And I just feel like the way that Mary's living, that money is real funny.
Oh, the money is straight up funny. And um I think that the house and stuff is probably in part stuff that was probably purchased. When I look at that house, it doesn't look new to me. It looks like something that a grandmother that had it built as her version of Tara would have had built in the 70s or 80s.
Yeah, yeah. And it's showing age, the furniture, everything.
Yeah,
Everything. It's
but also
weird.
I think that's Mary's taste, honestly. I think she's because she's gaudy and over, she's Mary's gaudy. Um that okay, so since we're talking about Mary, really all we got with Mary was we know that just in terms of the church stuff, we know that more of that is coming. So we can, we'll deal more with that just in the interest of time. We'll deal more with that probably next week. I'm assuming we'll get more of the scoops since we got the big bomb drop from Whitney that she spoke to Cameron for 3 hours. So I think we're going to get the bomb drop with that. I like the fact that the three of them agreed for her to confront Lisa first. I wasn't mad at that, even though I wanted to know, just because we're nosy. I like the fact that they agreed with her to confront Lisa first, because it once again just points out how Lisa is trying to produce the show but won't stand in it.
Right. I mean, here's the thing. If you're going to be the messy one or the bad guy,
Stand in it.
you yeah, you just need to live in it. And people have done that, and for the purposes of the show they survived. Like look at Ramona. You know what I'm
Ramona
saying?
and
Look
Ramona
at
is
Kyle Richards.
uh
You know?
Sheree literally admitted she was the bone carrier.
Yeah, look at Lisa Renna. Like just, that
Lisa
I mean that's
Sheree kept losing her job because she literally had nothing else to bring to the story besides being the bone carrier. She could have been the bone carrier and brought a little something else. There wouldn't have been this whole she's here, then she's gone, she's here, then she's gone. Because she is good. Like she gives the read. Because apparently that's what people like on Atlanta. She's not a bad she's a good cast member when she's got something to give other than just running back and forth. because if nobody really wants to film with you because they know that you're running back and forth, you got to give the show something else that they can sink their teeth into, to risk keeping you around in hopes that you will mend fences with the cast and ultimately they'll film with you.
But
um,
see, I don't think Lisa has anything except for other people's drama.
No, but I think, well, Lisa, no, she really doesn't. I mean, if you look at Lisa, like in terms of a personal story, she doesn't have one. I mean, she's not even effectively using this to promote her liquor brand. Um,
No.
I think Lisa's okay, so let's hop to Lisa. We come back to Mary because it's not a whole lot. I think that Lisa is asserting a certain level of privilege because she is the one who sort of suggested some of the women to Bravo. So in her mind, she is the Nene of this show. But season one, she did not show herself as a star. Annoying, but not as a star. She showed herself to be snobby, and because the people she was snobby to were characters that the audience generally liked, like Whitney and Heather, it didn't go, especially Heather, it didn't go over very well because you didn't
Hmm.
have much to offer in terms of star quality of your own. Then you tried to have this whole snobby attitude, which is always a risk with any audience in terms of, acting like you're better than other people. And then the people that you had most of that attitude with were people who ended up being fan favorites. Even if they didn't have the biggest storylines, people generally liked them because they liked their personalities. And so she
Right.
put herself in a real funky place. So what Lisa did, which was smart, except she is not, she wanted fame, instead she's getting notoriety.
Right.
Lisa
Right.
specifically positioned herself with the two people that she knew were bona fide stars of the show. Jen Shah, lover or hater, who was the breakout star last season, her. So if you need to secure yourself a position, that ain't gonna happen constantly walking around talking about being best friends with Meredith. And notice even Meredith realized she had to step it up a little bit. So
Right.
she positioned herself as friends with Jen, and you saw that because there was this all of a sudden friendship out of nowhere at the reunion. The other person that she positioned herself next to, and it's clear why, because it was obvious that there was going to be a Mary story. She positioned herself next to Mary because even though Mary wasn't necessarily the star, she clearly got a lot of press as being the most interesting person to watch.
Right.
She may
Right.
not she may not have been a breakout star in the way that Jen was, but in a way she was, because her name was on everybody's lips, even if to say she was weird. So
And
she
what's crazy is that they had a situation where a woman was basically like SWAT team, and they
Yep.
spent the whole weekend still talking about Mary.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, that's crazy. But
Well, you know why I think that is because, again, as we know, these shows are storyboarded just like any other show. So, fourth wall down again. I think it's because it was already planned that that whole weekend was going to be about Mary. Remember, the Jen Shah thing caught everybody off guard, and then of course you're going to address it because it's fresh, and and again, reality TV, manna from heaven. You want to get those fresh reactions. So that was reality TV that Bravo couldn't have imagined. It just literally just dropped in their lap like a pot of gold. But it is clear that what the storyline on paper was supposed to be in terms of their storyboard, it was going to be Mary, because to to put it into perspective, If the Jen Shah thing had never occurred, what were they going to talk? What other topic did they have?
Mary, that was it. Or
So
wait till Mary did something weird.
yeah, no, I think it was always going to be Mary because Lisa had already set it up in terms of the dude saying something to Meredith, and then Meredith tells Whitney of all people. Meredith doesn't even, when does Meredith talk to Whitney, but all of a sudden she just happens to tell Whitney about the Cameron thing?
That was weird. That was
So
weird.
exactly. So if it's so that even though Meredith apologized for it and whatever, and I'm not mad at her, Meredith gets on my nerves in other ways, but I'm not mad at her taking ownership for her role in it. And quite frankly, calling Lisa out and saying we all played a role. Now, again, I think she's going too far in her defense of Mary, but that's a whole other thing in her mind that I think ultimately Meredith is just stuck on the fact that she feels like Mary was the only one who didn't talk behind her back without realizing that Mary had no reason to talk behind her back because Mary didn't know any of this was going on because she wasn't a true part of the cast and nobody was friends with her. So, Mary wouldn't talk about your marriage because nobody was talking to Mary about your marriage, number one. And number two, Mary don't care about y'all. So,
At all.
at all. If one of them had come to her house and given her chapter and verse of everything going on between you and your husband, right down to pornographic videos of you and him swinging with other people, by the time they left and Mary went to bed and woke up the next morning, if she did remember, she still wouldn't care.
Yeah, yeah.
And she certainly ain't going to call another cast member to talk about it. I don't think that Mary gets down with the whole he say, she say stuff, not because she's better than them in that regard. It's because she thinks she's better than them in that regard, so much so that she doesn't give a damn about anything that they do, say, what's going on in their lives. Nothing.
Yeah. Which I think is actually hilarious.
It is absolutely hilarious because it is the thing that will always keep her on the sort of outside of not truly fitting in with the cast, whether she stays on the show or not, because that is who she is and that's never going to change.
But I also think that that's the thing that had Lisa Barlow targeting her in the first place.
Well, that and needing a storyline because again, the Jen stuff was not a factor.
Right, right. But no, but I think that Lisa Barlow really thinks she's somebody. And these little
Oh,
exchanges that she was having with Mary, where Mary is like, no, you're not,
oh,
were
absolutely.
annoying.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
So I think what's happening now with Lisa Barlow is that she decided that she was going to shadow produce and she's not doing it in an inobvious way. And because at the very least, we know Whitney's calling her out on it. Jen sees it, but I guess out of friendship is not calling her out on it. Meredith sees it, will call her out on it to her face, but not in front of the group because she's still trying to maintain some sense of loyalty because that's just who she is. I don't see that. I think that Meredith and Lisa may finish this season a little rocky, but I think once the reunion is done, we're going to see a very different dynamic between Meredith and Lisa if they both come back next season. Because we know that the show is definitely going to have a next season. If nothing else, Jen Shah secured the season with the trial. In
right.
fact, it's my understanding that they are planning to start shooting again, similar to last year, as early as January, but this time because of the trial. Well, maybe like January, February, because at the rate they're going with the next several episodes and at least a 3-part reunion. God, I hope not 4. The show is probably not going to end until mid to late January, probably even late
Okay.
January. But it's my understanding that shooting is going to start right away. They kind of have to, because if they want to, like, especially if Jen is going to continue to appear, then they're going to want to sort of get that lead up in terms of just what's going on in her life and everything, because the trial is scheduled for, what is it, March or April? March or April. If it,
Oh
you know,
wow. Okay.
oh yeah, it's whether or not it happens then, I mean, we know how these things work. And I remember even when she had the big money white shoe law firm, which is the, the one that probably she was referring to when she mentioned the $1.5 million retainer. Even they initially, when she had the big team out of Washington, one of the first filings they made was about the fact that the government had bombarded them with over 1 million documents, although hello, you asked for discovery, but that the
Right.
government had bombarded them with over 1 million documents, and there were no way that they would even get through all of that in a year, let alone um by November. So, which, we knew that, or October, we knew the trial wasn't going to happen in October. I think the government left that trial date on until the court forced them to take it off, because they were hoping that she was going to plead, because everybody else were dropping like flies, because it was clear in August, as we know, based on the letter that Stewart's lawyer sent, that he was going to take a deal, which means that Stewart probably from moment one was like, you know what, I already see the writing on the wall.
Yeah. I mean, I think, but like, I just think Stewart, I mean, some of the atmospherics lets me know, like, some of the stuff she was saying about Stewart, I mean, could be true. I mean, Stewart had enough sense to own a home and other assets that he could put up for his bond.
Well, and there's, and absolutely, because if they're being charged on the same level, then while he may have operated in the manner that we knew him for the purposes of this manufactured life that she had for the show, because we know that's manufactured, rented house, whole 9 yards, while that may be how they operated on the show, from the way it sounds, especially given that he was charged with exactly the same things she was charged with and are being treated the same way for the purposes of this scheme, they may very well have been more partners than employer employee.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean,
He
because
seems in a more favorable financial position than
because
her.
well, I don't know if it's necessarily that it was more favorable. I think just smarter in terms of what they did with their money. And remember, Coach Shaw didn't live at home because he lives someplace closer to the school. So he's renting an apartment someplace else, and she's about to do this show and wanted to have this rented home, because I'm wondering about a lot of the homes in terms of them being rented. And we do know that on these shows, when they show the exteriors of these homes, chances are that's not where they live, because
Right.
people would find them. So there's a lot of rentals. It doesn't mean that they don't own their homes. Like, we do know for sure that Lisa Vanderpump definitely owned Villa Blanca.
No, but I was reading somewhere, and I can't think about where, but she didn't have any assets. That's
Oh,
why
Jen
she put
Shaw,
up
no. Jen
cash.
Shaw didn't have any assets. So that's what I'm saying. At one point, they may have had a home, and maybe some things changed. I mean, who knows how the whole situation went when she left the other company. And then remember when Coach Shaw decided he didn't want to practice law anymore and decided to become a coach. I'm sure that he didn't, when he got hired, he didn't jump right into the couple $100,000 position that he currently has, because he wasn't a coach. He wasn't even a high school coach. He was a
But you
lawyer.
think you think with all of that luxury bag spending and cars and everything, that they would own a boat, own a
I
something,
I agree,
something somewhere.
especially if you got kids, because if nothing else, you want to
Yeah.
make sure everybody's got a place to come and lay their heads. And while Stu didn't have some big mansion, because I remember seeing a picture of his home, he owned a modest, like, 250 to $300,000 home. It was just enough to get his bond. And of course, we know in places other than the DMV that kind of money could probably still get you a nice home, even nicer home than here. Um,
Yeah. Speaking of
so
kids, can we shift to Whitney?
yes, let's go there because really there was really nothing less on Jim. We were just kind of going down the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Like I said, Mary, we'll get more into her next week. I'm looking forward to seeing what, if anything, the organizer does for her. I would be shocked if that organizer thing wasn't just something that Bravo set up just to have a little scene with her so they could make a fool out of her, showing that she was a hoarder.
I
Um,
mean, yeah, I that
yeah,
was
I don't
insane.
see that situation changing. I saw something with her on YouTube and it all looked the same. Now again, I don't remember when that was filmed. I have to look it up again. But okay, so Whitney, we already know she's trying to find the scoop. So Whitney and the rebranding. This is my thoughts on this. I absolutely get the idea that if you have this platform, you want to use the platform in a way that you can maximize your appearance. So while I think that Iris and Bo is an absolutely gorgeous name, I think it sounds very delicate, it sounds very feminine. So I actually really like the name. I do also totally get the idea of perhaps going, because it is such a saturated industry, going in a direction with a name that reminds people it belongs to you, because what's selling your brand isn't that you have some great expertise in this field. What is selling your product is literally absolutely nothing but the mere fact that you are on this show. So I absolutely agree with that, with the idea that rebranding in a way to remind people who you are in relation to why we know you, that's the end of what I agree with what we saw on Sunday. So
Okay, I
I'm
was
out.
supposed.
I'm tossing the ball totally you because I'm literally that's where my agreement ends. Go ahead.
Okay, so you want to have this hair product.
Is it a hair product? I thought it was a face product. I don't know what the hell it is.
I don't know what it is, but like
I'm
for
gonna look it
either
up right now. I think it's skin. I don't know.
for whatever it is, I don't think you're the poster child for it. And I also, the fact that we watched the show and we really can't recall what it is, it's just some beauty product,
I just looked skincare line.
a
Iris and Bow,
skincare.
and it's spelled
Okay.
Bow. And again, when I look at it, it's even cuter because it's Beau, Iris and Bow. Because remember she was doing it with her father.
Right, but like think about this, John, though. We watch this show, right?
Yeah, we
We
don't know.
don't know if it's creams, oils, face, like a face wash,
And then Jenny
essence
had to
you rub
go,
in.
and then Jenny had to go and give us old school Dwight. You got a fashion show
Yes,
with no fashions.
but then also like the conversation that she had with her husband.
Oh, that was cringeworthy.
And that's why I mean like going
Ooh,
back to the kids, right?
ooh, I'm in
He
pain.
wants to dump $1 million. Like who's giving her $1 million?
Oh, wait a minute. No, not giving her $1 million. Let's be clear on what the money
Loaning her.
situation is. $1 million credit line, but has
Yes.
already spent. What did she say? Already spent almost a $500,000.
Yeah, on what? On what? And then, you know, I'm so
Let me
glad
look up the
somebody's thinking,
website
I'm
if
so
there
glad
is one.
somebody's thinking about the kids. And when her older stepkids were over and they were kind of like, there was, she was acting like it's all good. We're all fun. We're all part of a family.
Oh, they're going to
But
be pissed.
you could feel an undercurrent. Like, I understand that because those stepkids are like, and this is how some people of other cultures, how they function. You're spending our inheritance.
Yep. Okay, website is absolutely beautiful, but you haven't done enough to drive people to it.
But like, yeah.
I
And
mean,
like
the
whenever
website is basically the pictures of what we saw, but again, don't first of all, $20,000 for that photo shoot. That photo shoot could have literally been just as beautiful for $500. Why do I know? Because I've seen it done. You've seen
but
it done. We
but
know people who
also
have done that in hair salons,
but also
and more extravagant, by the way.
you're floating around your house in some white dress for why? I don't know. There's no product demonstration. There's no
As Jenny said, where is the product? And I love when Jenny said the puppy's cute.
I didn't understand anything that was going on. And that's a lot of that was just like a lot of money.
And some
Uh
people can be good idea people, but they're not business people. That's not your gift. You may be a good idea person, but not the business piece. Your husband needs to be doing that.
but even taking skincare and that being like, okay, I'm on the Housewives, I'm gonna do skincare, right? Ramona had a skincare line. Like, there's already existing people way ahead of you on that skincare tip,
But the
and it's just
skin
not.
But the skincare thing is very tricky because to me, I think you have a better shot if you're going to go into the beauty realm. I think you have a better shot, which is what Candy did with makeup. And of course, because makeup you can add to it, you can change the colors, you can like keep expanding it if it does
Other
well.
other than other
You,
than Candy, because remember, Giselle had what
But
makeup
remember, Candy's
and
makeup is attached to something that she had already made successful.
exactly,
She didn't
exactly.
come out because Candy's makeup, because remember, I sell it. Candy's makeup is actually attached to the Bedroom Candy brand, which then, because people are always saying Candy Coated Nights, even though that's not what the brand is called, she, again, because we know Candy, she'll take lemons and make lemonade. Since people were saying Candy Coated anyway, she decided to call the makeup Candy Coated Cosmetics. But again, she attached it to something she already
Already
had
was
and had
doing,
made successful. She
and so
already had 500 consultants selling the toys, so we went to convention and it was like, okay, by the way, since we always show you new products at convention, we're adding this piece to it.
so
And there you
who
go.
what housewife, you're coming in late in the game. What
Hmm.
housewife has blown up on the beauty tip where
No,
you are now thinking about getting a
and that's
million
why,
dollar line of
and I
credit?
agree with you. I'm simply, the only reason why I said makeup is because unlike a Ramona, she is young. Unlike Candy, she is white. So and let's face it, those two factors alone help, because then she could, she's got more entree to connect with some of the other young white beauty influencers and stuff like that. So, and she conveys youthful. That doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be successful. I'm just saying that based on what I just saw on her site, it is not makeup, it's skincare, and skincare is very tricky. If it's, well, it's tricky, period. But if you are not known for having an expertise in that, you're not like a chemist, a dermatologist, maybe if there was a dermatologist putting out a line and you just slapped your label on it, and then it could be like Whitney Wild Rose endorsing Dr. blah blah blah. But this is just you, a random housewife
In an
from
already
Utah,
saturated, in an already saturated
and
market.
it's the skin serums and all of that, which also means it's expensive, because as expensive as makeup can be, those serums and stuff are never cheap. The price points, even when you buy that stuff over the counter, like the oil of Olay version at CVS, it's like $20.
Right, right.
I mean, it's never cheap. Let me see what her, like. Okay, so it's
So is her
wild.
husband gonna shut her down? Because I mean, he was giving her some real truth. Like, I could die. Like, I'm older than you. We got these young kids. I got these older kids. Anything happens to me, like we're all done.
I'm with it. And then didn't she tell him she got another insurance policy on him?
I mean, that was just like the craziest
Yeah,
conversation.
I'm looking at this daily cleanser, $29.
See, that's
So
too much.
yeah,
Too
especially
much.
for young girls who in their 20s who might be inclined to buy things from her because she presents younger. Her anti-aging oxygen serum, whatever, $49. Daily toner, $29.
Girl.
Daily glow, $55. Hydraulic hydration is, the bottom line is, many of these things, like for instance, she has this wild rose daily routine, $199. Is like, one of those things that you could get from Mary Kay or somebody, where it's like six or whatever. Well, if I'm going to pay $199, I might as well go with, a skin system. I might, if I got a Mary Kay person, I'll go with that. Or to a store, go with Estee Lauder or Clinique or something, or hell, just go and get a bunch of oil of Olay stuff from CVS. But, and it's no shade, it's the reality of the industry. And that's why I'm saying, if she was going to do beauty, you got a better shot at makeup, because then you could just be like, use this huge audience you have. And I'm sure she's probably got a crap ton of followers on IG or whatever, and do makeup tutorials and sell your own stuff. But the audience that you need to capture, because women of a certain age don't suddenly change their face serum routine, the audience you need to capture will buy stuff if they see you wearing it. They'll buy Wild Rose Beauty eyeshadow if you have a palette for like $15 and they see you using it on Instagram. If they'll buy crap from Olivia Jade, they'll buy crap from you. It's so yeah, that whole thing was disturbing, and I felt it was cringy, and I felt bad because I actually like her. So I was like, girl, like, I just hate to see somebody like fail miserably. The last thing I wanted to touch on is the whole Mary thing, because I think this is going to come up again, if not on the show. I've been seeing, especially since Mary said it, I've been seeing it peak, little peaks of it on social media. Mary pulling out, mentioning race as it relates to why they are going after her, and it just so happens that they're going after another woman of color as well, in terms of Jen. Now, there's two pieces to that. One, Mary, you are presenting a fabulous storyline that, um, because of her limited role in season one, and the fact that it was all coming out during season one, they didn't really have a chance to explore. So now you are the storyline of season two. So I think that That's part of it. I think that was it was going to happen. It was just a matter of who and how. Um,
But here's a tip for Mary. If you're going to go down that route, you cannot start talking about the Mexicans.
and there you go. I also think she's getting a tremendous pass from people saying, "Well, Mary doesn't use her words well, and this and that and the third." Okay, but if Mary doesn't use her words well, she used. Are we going to ignore that she called Heather chubby? I forgot to mention that last week.
Oh yeah,
Um,
that.
uh,
And then, are we going to ignore why Jen Shah zapped out on her the first season where they were talking about the
ex-
7 black people hanging out in front of
exactly.
7-Eleven?
And didn't she say that her husband was white? He's not. I mean, I could see where he
I
probably
forgot
tried to
about
pass here
that.
or
I
there
forgot about that. That was crazy.
because that's clearly what she wanted. Not to mention her obvious bleaching of her skin,
Oh my
which
god, which is
it looks
crazy.
really bad with her not wearing makeup. I mean, keep the natural hair and style it, but the skin, good grief. I think with her hair, if she got with the right person that added some kinky curly pieces to it and gave her like a cute little natural do, she's obviously got the hair for it. It just looks like it's probably thin from all the bad wigs. Um, but either way, she needs a stylist all the way around. I mean, it's obviously she's got clothes. They just need to teach her how to wear them. But yeah, I cringe with that with Mary because is there could we question whether or not they would treat a white cast member the same way as it relates to church stuff? Potentially, but I think we also have to remember again, we are in Salt Lake City where from day one, the church, the Mormon church period, religion in general, has always been the seventh housewife on this show. So this is a part of the franchise where they take religion much more seriously because it is such the undergirding of everything with these women, with the exception of Meredith, because of where they are.
Right, right.
And I think that that's something that keeps being forgotten, that there is an additional culture at play in all of this, which is the culture of religion, which is a whole lot bigger than where it is certainly in any other Housewives franchise, but also it just in most places of the country that we can't conceive of. In fact, the only people who can truly really grasp that to the degree of them, other than you and I analyzing it, are people in other countries that are ruled by religion.
Right, right.
Like you take some folks who live overseas in like a Muslim country or whatever, they understand how seriously folks take the whole idea of religion and religion being used this way and bastardized and whatever. I mean, we talk about it like, because there's always some religious like thing going on, with the mega preachers and all of that, but it's for them, it's deeper than that.
Yeah.
The other piece that has to be remembered is while the Mary storyline was clearly planned out, the Jen Shah thing wasn't. So having that second woman of color being criminalized or criminalizing herself was something that just fell into their laps. And it also just happened to be a character who was a lightning rod, so it's not going to be let go. And part of it is because the person who is the subject of it doesn't have enough sense not to talk about it her damn self.
But I also think, and this goes back to like a couple of shows ago, I also think there's an element of them questioning where these women of color got their money,
Of course.
whereas they don't question each other about that.
and we know and I will never deny that that is an issue, because that is an issue that many, including you and I, have had with Andy Cohen for years, in terms of the way he treats the black housewives, in terms of his idea, and of course it's impossible for him to pull that with Candy, because the whole reason they courted her is because of who she was. But outside of her, this treatment of them as and saying things to them about money, um because of this notion that he made them, or their money is, the fact that they are on a certain level is inextricably tied to what he gave them with their Bravo empire or whatever, until Monique checked him, um,
Right.
which we know pissed him off, but I'm glad she did, because we know that the way that he talks to them about money, or asks them how much they make or what they're doing or whatever, those questions have never been asked to white housewives. And if it has, it's only been asked to ones who are like obviously not well off, like your Brandy Glanvilles, the people that he knows they brought to the network purely for stories and drama, as opposed to them really fitting the whole ideal of what a housewife was originally supposed to be.
Right. Right.
And even when some of those other women, like on the OC, when one behind the other of them were losing everything and going bankrupt, and the real estate bubble and stuff blew up, I still felt like there was a more sympathetic way they were treated. It still wasn't this attitude of, well, now we really know that, you only live well because of me. It was kind of like, oh, well, how's your family doing? The real estate bubble blew up. You had to close your business. He definitely treated even who was it that really suffered with that the most, like Tamara and Vicky, when that whole thing happened with them, especially, they were treated far more gingerly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Or
we know that a
Lynn.
lot of these
Remember
women.
remember Lynn with the collars, the jewelry, whose house got uh she got evicted.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. And it was very sad,
Oh,
right?
absolutely. Let Karen Huger, or Giselle or Robin, like, I don't care, even if it's characters we don't even necessarily care for, but let one of them get put out of their house.
Right, right,
So, and of course we have to always acknowledge when some of the women don't help themselves, because that one, when we, for instance, that one season of Potomac, when, as usual, Giselle and Robin didn't have a storyline, and they made their storyline trying to make an issue out of where Karen lived, and her being in Virginia and all of that kind of stuff. But even if they do it to each other, boo boo, that doesn't mean that you can do it. It's kind of like the N word. I'm not saying that anybody should say it, but if I say it, it's still a hell of a lot different than if you say
right, right,
it. So at any rate, I'm glad we started earlier, because we still ended up going a little long, but I think that we have wrapped it up. The As far as Bravo news, nothing really new going on, like nothing earth shattering. Word on the street is that Kenya and Marlo have fallen out. People always do all kinds of spoilers for Atlanta. I'm just telling you all for informational purposes. I've not been a loyal Atlanta watcher for some time. I keep up just because there's certain people that I kind of like, or maybe feel a little empathy for. But I think that as far as any type of storyline that relates to Kenya and Marlo, um, having a falling out, and they're not following each other on social media, especially if when you see them not following each other on social media, that is in large part, probably 95%, because if there are any two people on that show currently and even in the recent past who know what it is that they are supposed to do and who their character, what their character arc is supposed to be, it is Kenya and Marlo. So
Yeah,
while
yeah.
everybody is worried about whether or not they have whatever, for all we know, Kenya and Marlo are somewhere kicked back with a couple of glasses of Merlot, but doing it at home so nobody sees them out together. Because I mean, and that's not to say that Candy doesn't know the assignment and some of the others that are on the show, but Kenya and Marlo have always been, and other than Nene herself, some of the biggest risk takers that will unapologetically put themselves out there and embrace the fact that if I'm going to be the victim, if I'm going to be the villain, I'm going to be the baddest villain. Or in the case
Right.
of Marlo, if I'm going to be the bitch that will say some ignorant shit, I'm going to say the most ignorant shit that I could possibly think of. That's just them making good television. And Kenya, for the 100th time, for you Kenya haters, has told y'all that 5,000 different times. And her castmates
Yeah.
have also told you that ain't the chick that they hang with off the show, which is why you see an entirely different person on social media. If you follow
Right.
Kenya on social media, especially seeing her with her baby, like, it is rare when it's like a holiday or a birthday or whatever that I already don't know that when I go to Kenya's page and see whatever she is posting about that baby, that I'm not going to tear up.
But also, you know that it's kind of all BS because Kenya has friends and a team of people
Absolutely.
who are
And I
not
know
like all
people
over the place.
personally who have met her and spent time with her and are like, if you want to deal with somebody who the nightmare that they are on the show is who they are in real life, it ain't Kenya, it's
Right,
Nene.
right. Oh, I'm
Now
sure.
Nene, what you see is what you get. Now that's the one thing she can say that she's real about. It ain't her face, but that attitude is 100% all the time. And I think we've seen that because we've seen how she's treated Andy. Because I
Well, you
saw 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, they were doing a marathon, and I just happened to be flipping, and it was that reunion that was maybe like probably the one right before she left the first time, so you could tell this is when she was really feeling herself. So this was like maybe season 5 or 6. It was the one where her and Kenya were both next to Andy. She was wearing, I think it was the one that she was wearing the red dress, because that's the one where you have so many memes because she sat there making all kinds of faces.
faces,
And
yes.
I had forgotten how nasty she was, to not just with the faces and stuff, but to Andy himself. Like, the stuff she was saying was just cringeworthy. Like, and it wasn't even like she was like cussing him out, but it was just the tone
No,
and
but
the
but she
nastiness and whatever. And I was like, oh my God.
but she thought that Donald Trump, like this is to show you the thinking. She thought that Donald Trump was going to make her rich. Remember that was when she
Well,
was
yeah,
running around
because
talking
then
about a Trump check.
Yeah,
Like,
because and remember, I want to say it was Donald Trump who introduced her to that guy. Remember
yep,
when she was like
yep,
I think the pizza thing or whatever in Florida, because then that
yes,
turned into the whole thing with her and Marlo, like the Italian guy.
yes,
And if I recall,
yeah.
Donald Trump was the connection with that. So yeah, and she started coming on. She's talking about Trump checks and all the whole 9 yards. And the voice changed and all of that. But that was the reunion when she made the faces and whatever. And I just happened to be flipping by it. And it was just in time because I saw the face. I said, "Oh, is this the one?" Because I saw the red dress. And I can't remember what Andy said to her. And she was basically like, all but saying, kiss my ass and what you gonna do about it.
Yeah.
Like, it was bad. Like, and and I'm not even, neither one of us could, we could care less about Andy Cohen. He makes his money, not just on the front end, he also makes it on the back end. Even with that book, he doesn't care what anybody said about anybody else, or even what they said about him, because at the end of the day, they knew it was going to be a bestseller, and also expensive because it's thick as hell. And it was published through his publishing company, even though they were talking about him. So he doesn't care.
I gotta tell you, and this is for a whole nother conversation. I got the Audible book with my free credits, and I've listened to the whole thing. So we'll have to talk one day.
Oh, I'm looking forward to it. In fact, I need to look and see, because I have some free credits too. So I need to go through, because I've heard pieces of it, and people have sent me excerpts. And of course, in those initial weeks, most of the vloggers that I enjoy on YouTube and podcasts and stuff, because I love to support fellow folks, all of them were doing like this chapter and that chapter and whatever, and I kept saying I'm going to get to it, but as you know, I was at the tail end of publishing as well. So, but yeah, so that's the one thing. And the other thing, again, involving Atlanta, and I'm like, how whack, is apparently Angela Simmons is going to appear. I don't think as a
Oh,
castmate, I think as a friend of. But see, to me, it doesn't make any sense. Angela is the baby, or the young one. Angela,
she's not that young anymore. She's
she's
like
too young
30.
for that crew.
Yeah. But they got to
She
transition. I mean,
Yeah, well, she now, one, of course, not a housewife, never has been. I don't think that dude ever got married, but hell, neither is Marlo. Um, but I just feel like, and maybe it's because she also spent the time on that hip hop, whatever, not loving hip hop, but what is the one
growing
with all
up
the
hip hop or
growing up hip
something.
hop. I don't think she ever truly fit in on that, because I don't think she wanted the level of ratchetness that they probably wanted from her. So I get it that she didn't fit in with them. I just don't necessarily think she fits in here either, because of her age. Now, if it was her sister, to me, that would make more sense age wise. She's only a few years older than her, but she always carried herself older. She even looks a little bit older.
Yeah.
I just feel like, if nothing else, she would kind of fit in good. And I would imagine they probably all know each other. She would fit in good with that whole like Candy group, even if not with Candy, certainly with, now that they have a Drew Sidora who seems a little bit younger. I just feel like, given the people who they have currently on the show, Angela again gives them what they want in terms of trying to pull it younger, but there's nobody to meet her there. So it still sticks out as like sort of sore thumb stunt casting. Now, again, I think it's just as a friend, but you know how this works. If they feel like, based on the way that filming is going, they might get more mileage out of her as a cast member, then they'll upgrade her, even if at the last minute. Because if nothing else, even because I don't know if her and her sister have their company anymore, because I don't think that really did anything big. But she actually has money, even if it's just inherited. And one thing I will say is that she and her sister in particular always worked. Like, they
Right.
had their little sneaker company and whatever. And then, of course, Angela in particular, if she wasn't hosting, she's done this show, which that hip hop show, which got her some kind of check, even if not a big one. Money, she was working.
Why
Um,
won't they bring back that top model chick? I actually kind of liked her, but
Eva, she moved to Texas. So
oh, oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
yeah, she
Oh
moved.
well.
Yeah, she moved to Texas. But I think that they were phasing her out anyway, because remember, they were like, every season she was pregnant. I agree with you. I think that Eva probably could have given more on the show, but remember, she also married a politician. So I
Right.
think that the Eva, the diva that we know and wanted, She would give some good reads if she had to, but if you notice, she didn't give us what we know she can give, because we know that chick. And she had several shows, one of them a reality show with her girlfriend. She had her own show on Bravo,
Oh,
or
I
either
didn't.
Bravo or
Oh,
VH1. It was only like a season or two. It was based in LA, and it was her and her girlfriends. And we know that she can get down, because I mean, she's been out there. She done dated this one. You knew, I mean, she got the crazy baby daddy.
yeah.
I think part of it is a combination of the fact that she wanted to keep working in the industry, because she does work. She has her own series on BET, but and people said it was good. But at least when you are acting, even if it's on a show that's, a little this or that, people will give you grace because you're acting. But if something is supposed to be a reality show and you're ratchet and your husband is a politician, then it doesn't work. I don't know if he's staying in politics, especially since they moved, but I mean, he ran for mayor of Atlanta.
Right, right.
Yeah,
I remember
so
that.
I think, so I'm wondering if that's part of it. But, it's not like the sister ain't steadily working. She had her, she wasn't just on the show of BET. It was her show. Like it was about a woman like running a strip club with men or whatever. I didn't watch it because I didn't have BET Plus, but everybody said it was good. And it was like her show. She's the woman who runs the place.
And her
So she,
kids are cute. Her kids are cute. She's
yes.
cute too.
She got to stop messing with her face. I just saw her on the red carpet for one of the big, how there's been a couple of award shows that sort of got
Mhm.
by us in the past couple of weeks. And she was on the red carpet for one of them, and she was almost unrecognizable. Thankfully, I think it was mostly filler,
Mm.
but it wasn't. I'm like, girl, stop it. You're too cute for that. Do not go the Vivica Fox
Yeah.
route, because when she started messing with her face, it never took a turn back at OK Town.
Right, right.
So that's really it. The rest of them, no big deal. We know that the Real Housewives of New York, there's still kind of stuff going back and forth, but we basically know they did the investigation. Everybody knows the deal with Ramona. Like, it would it surprise people that she like made racially insensitive remarks? Um,
No,
no,
not
not
at
at all.
all.
Miami is coming back. I'm actually interested in that. Even not a Pilar person, but I liked Miami before. I mean, they have folks slapping each other. Now, granted, and uh, now apparently there's none of the. I don't think any of the originals are back except for Pilar, so we'll have to see. But I felt like Miami went out of their way in the past to keep it spicy. So I'll give it an episode and see what
Okay.
happens. Because
Okay, I'll do too.
yeah, and in fact, I think it was supposed to be in the spring. I actually think I want to say I saw something that it was like starting like the 14th or 15th, so it may already be up. It's going to be on Peacock, but just like the girls trip thing, I think that once it airs there, then for a few weeks and they build up a few episodes, then they show it on Bravo, because now the ultimate girls trip is um on Bravo. It's on like at a weird time, so it's not getting like a whole lot of advertising, because I think obviously they still want you to watch it on Peacock, but it's on Bravo somewhere. So
Okay.
that is it, everybody. Thank you as always, Missy, and we will definitely talk. I love us doing a deep dive on those women behind the scenes. We've got the parenting stuff coming up. Everybody, don't forget to order the book, although printing is taking a little longer because of shipping and Amazon. It sucks, but that is because everybody's been so supportive. My initial pre-order was almost 50 books, so it's taking mine a little bit longer to bring in. So I guess it's a blessing. It's just taking a little longer to get them because of the printing, but they'll be here around the first. So super excited about that. So order your books. And of course, as I talked about the 100th episode, like editing, all that stuff. So you will have it. That's why this is 102. But we did not forget about 100. So that is everything that is going on. You know, you love it when we come and hang with you. And we did it a little bit earlier because I guess Melissa knew deep down we were going to run long because we had so much to talk about.
Yes. Yes.
And yeah, like there's still a lot of stuff going on. I didn't even realize that the Megan Thee Stallion Tory Lanez trial, well, really it's Tory Lanez trial, had started. I thought they were still just debating about crap, but apparently the trial's going on. I'm still more interested in the end of the Elizabeth Holmes trial because that ain't never going to end.
Yeah, I mean,
And
that's a
then
whole
the
craziness
Murdaugh
right there.
family in South Carolina, every time you think that it's, it's done, they like find out something else that the dude did. That family is out of control.
And there was a really good special on Oxygen that I watched the other night on that where I thought I knew everything, but I watched the special and
Oh,
I'm
I
like,
have to look. I didn't know that Oxygen did a Murdaugh special. I got to pull it up because
yeah,
I had just been following this really good podcast that has been covering it, and they've been getting like local attorneys and everybody. And so
they have that podcast. They have those podcast people on the special.
okay, yeah, it's a man and a woman, and they have
Hmm.
been like doing like 2 episodes a week. So I'd been following them, so that's where I initially got kind of got hooked on it. But I definitely want to see that special. It's so crazy. But anyway, we're gonna go because podcast Podbean's gonna kick us off anyway, because despite best intentions, of course we got to the 2 hour mark.
Of course.
Okay, so all right, everyone, thank you for hanging with your girls on one of our Bravo nights. Also, I know you're probably listening to this on one of your favorite podcast networks, and I'm glad you are. But if you are not listening on Apple iTunes and you have it, go over there, leave us a 5-star review and and some comments. You can certainly use all the ways that I've left in the info box to stay in touch. Twitter and Instagram at Let's Be Honest JJ, and via email, Let's Be Honest JJ at gmail.com. If you have any scoop or anything you want me to follow up on, let me know. You can always DM me as well, and join in on the daily fun at the Fashion and Drama Diaries. The link for that is also in the info box. And if you want to support the show, there's also the Cash App and Venmo information in there as well. So, other than that, as always, if you are thinking about it, linking about it, clicking about it, and you want to talk about it, chances are I want to talk about it too. So, let's be honest together. Bye bye, Melissa. Bye bye, Melissa. I got to give you some more applause because we know
Oh.
that Melissa's right. We attorneys don't get enough applause on a regular basis. All right. Good night.